Now, obviously, this only shows the top 8. They also had to compete through 2 days of Swiss pairings in order to do this. However, James, we saw defeat Emil last round, and he also defeated Alex the round before that. Lance, on the other hand, just defeated Patrick, and the round before that, he defeated Xander. So that's a pretty tough field to have to go through here.
Yeah, we saw Xander's match on stream yesterday against Lance, and Xander was the national champion in juniors a few years ago. So yeah, Xander no stranger to the big stage. So yeah, tough battle the whole way through.
Yeah, and I know that Patrick Martinez is an excellent player from the California area. So I've personally watched him play myself, and I do know that that Lance had an incredibly tough feat in order to be able to actually get to this the finals here.
Right, and another big thing about these decks, which is pretty interesting, is I don't think that at least Primal Kyogre probably wouldn't even be able to play previous to that banning of Lysander's trump card. So it has really opened up the deck diversity where we were seeing, over half the field being Seismitoad and such in the past. That we're really opening up and seeing a lot of decks that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we keep mentioning the trump card that we've been mentioning for the last 3 days, but that's because there was a huge impact whenever it did get banned, and now here we are seeing exactly what's left after its banning.
All right, we're going to take a look at what James has player history here. Bring that up.
All right, James, we watched this last round, but he does have a first. He won a states in 2014. There we go. He topped 4 states this year, and obviously he's in the top 8 of this national championship.
Right, and he's going for the victory, so maybe we can change that last line for him here pretty soon. But he's going to have to go up against Lance. It's going to be a really interesting battle between these two.
And we also see the Pokemon that are featured on this slide. That's the Rayquaza EX and the Aegislash EX, which paid dividends against Emil last round.
Right. One big thing to note, though, is that Aegislash EX shuts down Pokemon with special energy attached to them. Lance doesn't run any of those at all. Let's take a look at his player info.
That's right. Speaking of Lance, here's Lance's player info. Lance's past accomplishments are a regionals top 8 and a states top 8 both this year. So obviously we add the top 8 in nationals. That's a trifecta right there.
Yeah. He's and again, like we said, he's going to be trying to add that national champion to his accomplishments here as well. And you see the big cards there, of course, the Primal Kyogre and the Keldeo, which helps on both of those decks.
That's right. The Keldeo EX can actually attack for tons of damage in this deck. And Primal Kyogre itself, it's not shabby either with its 150 damage for 4 energy.
Right, and it's also got that interesting thing that both decks use Kyogre to help themselves get out of any kind of status locks or can't retreat situations like that. But none of the decks these final decks that they're playing against don't really have that issue.
That's right. The Keldeo is with the Russian for sure. Primal Kyogre's Ancient Trait allows it to really just blow up out of nowhere, and if you can get it in play right away, you can start attacking for tons of damage right away before you even know it. So the 4 energy, it's a little misleading. It's actually a very fast attacker if you get the right hand.
Right. So what do we see that's interesting in here? So one other card that is pretty unique in Lance's deck is he's running Shrine of Memories.
I don't even remember what the Shrine of Memories does.
Shrine of Memories is a stadium that lets you use attacks from your previous evolution cards, and that's really great for Primal Kyogre if it doesn't want to be moving those energy around.
That's right. I believe for 2 energy, it can auto-sleep its opponent. So that's pretty interesting right there. And, I mean, I just like all these water attackers that this water deck has. Not only does it have the Shaman EX, but it plays Articuno. Articuno. We have not seen that card featured here. I can guarantee you that.
Right. The Articuno is there because it's got that Delta Plus Ancient Trait. Lets it take an extra prize on an attack, which if you get in one of those awkward situations where you've knocked out a non-EX Pokemon and you have to, quote-unquote, take 7 prizes, this lets you, override that and get into a normal rhythm of how many cards you need to take.
All right. Well, let's wait no more. We are ready with the interview. Let's check out what the final 2 competitors have to say.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I was like, oh.
Champion, how does that feel?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. How do you feel?
It's pretty exciting.
It's pretty exciting, definitely. For anyone that's just joining us on the stream, really quick, go ahead, just give us your name and how much practice did you put into before coming to Nationals?
I'm James Staszel, and I put in quite a bit of practice, especially the few nights before Nationals.
A few nights before, you've been really running down with this same deck. How long have you been decided on using the deck that you're using?
2 days.
2 days ago, and you are contending to be the national champion. How about you? How long have you been, your name, and how long have you been using and practicing the deck that you have right now?
My name is Lance Bradshaw, and I decided to play Kyogre the night before the tournament started.
The night before the tournament started, so both of our potential national champions for the senior division are kind of just getting their decks thrown together and just doing what trainers do best and battling it out. Well, we're not going to delay this anymore. Wish you guys the best of luck. Have fun. But one of you guys are going to be walking away the national champion. We'll throw it back to the casters right now and get into this match.
All right. Lance one-upping James right there, saying, you know what, 2 days, that's tons of time. I had half that time.
Yeah. And it's something you see a lot with TCG players, where they'll have 2 or 3 or maybe even more decks that they're playtesting up until the night before the tournament starts and making that decision at the last possible moment, really trying to adjust to what they think everyone else is playing.
Yeah, that takes me back to my player days, man. I'm with them. I know what it feels like to be playtesting the night before the tournament, just wondering if you're even going to be playing the deck that you've been playtesting for the last month or so.
Yeah, exactly.
Audible.
Let's head on over to the match right now. They've got everything going. Looks like we're opening up with a Shaman versus Articuno start. No, that's not Articuno. That's Suicune.
Well, we still don't have the top down, but here we go. Yeah, there it is. Suicune against a Shaman here.
Now, Shaman is never a card that you want to start with because you don't get to use that setup ability if it's your starting Pokemon. So it kind of negates one of the most powerful abilities you have in your deck.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And you do want to start finding a way to attack with it in order to be able to bounce it back to your hand. Sky Return over there. Rayquaza does get a Spirit Link, I believe, or is that a Double Colorless Energy?
That's Double Colorless Energy to start off with.
All right, Double Colorless Energy, and now a Juniper from James. Fast start, once again, just like last round.
Yep, really tearing through his deck. Gets another out now, gets into Spirit Link on the other Rayquaza.
Okay, which actually tells me that he's going to be evolving the Rayquaza here into a Mega Rayquaza, and that's going to end his turn. Otherwise, he would have just attached a Spirit Link to the other Rayquaza.
Well, it's going to be his plan anyway. He does not quite have the card yet, but he's Ultra Balling right now. Could be going to get that so he can set up. Since he can't attack on his first turn anyway, ending his turn without getting to attack isn't a big drawback. And unlike most Pokemon, since Mega Rayquaza has that ancient trait, it allows it to evolve on the first turn.
That's right, and he decided to go with a Shaman EX rather than a Rayquaza here. So that means that he's going to be gambling a little bit with the setup. Draws 4 cards.
But there it is, right off the top.
Yeah, nails that Mega Rayquaza here, and that's going to put him in a great position because he's going to be able to start Emerald Breaking before you know it.
Yep, gets the Aegis Slash down. Even though it doesn't actually help in this matchup, he may not know that for sure. But once he gets Skyfield out, it's also going to be filling up his bunch for those Emerald Breaks.
Yeah, that actually ended up being huge for him, the fact that he found that Rayquaza here. If he wouldn't have found it, he would have actually had a much, much slower start. But as it stands, he now gets ended by his opponent after dropping his own hand down to 3 cards at the end of his own turn.
Yeah, that's not a terrible turn of events. Even though he had a Colress in his hand, it's still he's going to get a fresh 6 cards. But Lance only played a Water Energy before he played that in. And on top of that, just plain Suicune start. It's really not an awesome start for him. But since that Suicune does have Safeguard, he's not in any chance of any early damage the way that things set right now because James's only attackers are EX Pokemon.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Suicune is safe with Safeguard, and he's not under pressure by any means, but he has to manually attach energies every turn to the Suicune in order to get it powered up. So that's not an easy task either. That means he won't be attacking until his 3rd turn of the game at least.
Right, and you see Lance playing a card that really only works in the deck that he's playing. He's playing that Dive Ball, allows him to find any water Pokemon, and unlike Ultra Ball, you don't have to discard 2 cards to play that.
That's right, and the Dive Ball did find him a Kyogre, so he's at least got the Pokemon in play that he needs.
Right, he's after that end, he still didn't have the Pokemon that he wanted, but luckily that Dive Ball helps him pull out of what he's drawn there. It looks like he's also got a Keldeo in his hand, and not sure if he's going to put that down or not. Looks like he will. He's also got the Float Stone to go with it, so now he can swap Pokemon in and out and have whoever he wants active at any time.
That's right, and instead of retreating, or instead of rushing in anyway, he decides to keep the Suicune up, which is obviously the right play thanks to Safeguard.
Right. Suicune is just going to be this big defensive wall. Give him as much time as he needs to try to set up out of this kind of not great start that he had for his opening hand.
That's right. And now James, on the other hand, how will he follow up his explosive start from last turn and his explosive start from the last round even?
Yeah, he plays a bicycle or an acro bike there, is able to get the other Mega Rayquaza. So now he has both of his Mega Rayquazas out, has a float stone on his Shaman EX, but also puts the double colorless on it so he can do the Sky Return, get it back in his hand, and that way he negates having to start with it. We'll be able to use the setup on it eventually.
That's right. And I was about to mention that he had a full bench, which meant that if he does find a Heatran, which is obviously his best answer against Suicune here, he wouldn't have been able to get it in play, but he does find a timely Skyfield, which means that he not only will be Sky Returning here, but he also gets to start powering up this Heatran whenever he finds one.
Right, plays an Ultra Ball there, gets rid of a Bronzor because he's already got one on his bench, it looks like. Also gets rid of a Metal Energy so he can start using Bronzong's ability once it's in play to accelerate energy out of the discard pile. And there's that Heatran you were talking about.
That's right. He does no doubt need that Heatran, but he also needs to find a way to start powering it up. Without a Bronzong in play, he won't even be able to attach any energies to it right now.
Right, and he already played his one attachment from hand for the turn, putting the double colorless on that Shaman. So it looks like he's going for setup for next turn to try to make some progress there. He'll get that double colorless energy back, and so he can actually get the Heatran moving a little bit next turn. If he can find a Bronzong, he'll be set up pretty well there.
That's right. That Suicune is already paying its dividends. It does not take any damage from that attack from Shaman, and without a Lysander or without a Heatran to be able to attack, that Suicune is just going to be this giant wall that is not going to take any damage here.
Right, except for that Heatran if he ever gets it going.
That's right. Now, the Sky Return does force James to activate a new Pokemon before his turn's over, and he decides to activate a Mega Rayquaza here.
Right, and it does have a double colorless energy on it. If he's able to move some stuff around, he might be able to, if he plays a Lysander of his own, he could maybe get around that Articuno. But for now, he's just getting that Pokemon up front. We see Lance at the start of his turn play a Rough Seas, shuts down the bench size over there on James's side of the board. He did have another Skyfield in his hand, but he just got end and it had to be shuffled away. So now he can't play that Shaman. He just Sky Returned back to his hand.
That's right. And a Rough Seas countered the Skyfield, which was huge. That actually, I love seeing that part of the game here. And I love seeing the 4 Skyfields go up against the, only 3 stadiums from Lance here, which means that the Skyfield should eventually get locked in place and we'll be able to see giant Emerald breaks.
Right, he's putting another energy on that Suicune, not doing a ton for right now, but he's almost to Aurora Beam. Whether or not he's going to be using that will remain to be seen, because he's got that Heatran will be coming up here pretty soon, and then we're going to have to make a different call for having Suicune up front. That's
right. James is no doubt looking to power up a Heatran. He's also looking to get a Bronzong in play in order to be able to start Metal Linking. On the other side, Lance is still going with that Suicune strategy, and we'll have to see if it actually does pay off here.
Right, he hasn't put anything on that Kyogre yet, except for the Spirit Link, so it's ready to go to Primal Kyogre without ending his turn. Gets a Float Stone on the Heatran. He does have a Lysander in his hand, so he might try to maneuver around. He's got a Skyfield and a Lysander, so he's going to bring up that Kyogre, probably drop that Skyfield. Does he have an... Oh, and he doesn't have... If he plays that Skyfield, then he'll be able to play that Shaman return to his hand, get some more cards, and try to go for a big Emerald break.
He does not. He only deals 150 damage to the Kyogre, and that's not enough to knock it out, man.
Yeah, but he is getting damage somewhere. He doesn't have to deal with that Suicune wall anymore.
The Rough Seas starting to pay small dividends here, getting rid of 30 damage on the Kyogre. If he can get it on the bench and keep it safe from harm, he'll be able to start putting pressure on his opponent's field and slowly but surely start healing up his Kyogre.
Right, and I did misspeak there. James had that Shaman end away. He does have the Skyfield, but the rest of his hand is all of his double colorless energy that he doesn't have in play right now.
One thing I do want to notice is that there's already a Spirit Link on the Kyogre, which means he cannot attach a Float Stone to it.
Right.
And that's actually pretty important. Well, actually, I spoke too soon because of the Keldeo being in play with the Float Stone. I was about to say that he needed to have it in play, but he already did.
Right, so he can rearrange with that Keldeo, move the Suicune back up front, become that big wall, and we see the Aurora Beam go off.
That's right, Aurora Beam dealing 70 damage to the Mega Rayquaza, and, first hit, or one of the first hits goes to Lance here.
Yeah, he's got he finally gets to attack, both players getting their first attack of the game off in that pair of turns there.
And I believe we just saw double colorless energy get attached to the Shaman, right?
Yeah.
Which means that James's hand must be awful or something along those lines.
Yeah,
because he's
his
gonna have
hand
to
was
Skyward
3
Return.
double colorless energy and a sky field last turn.
Jeez, that's an awful hand. But luckily, because of Shaman Sky returning, he'll be able to at least set up, assuming he gets to discard some of these cards from his hand.
Right, he does have a float stone in his hand as well, so not a ton going on. He had to discard from that Mega Rayquaza to retreat it, which means it can't attack until he gets another energy on it. And also except we just dropped the Sky Field. So that Primal Kyogre is going to be stuck at 120 damage for right now. It was going to be able to heal off everything over a few turns. Oh, but here comes another Rough Seas.
All right, Kyogre down to 90 damage, or 90 hits taken. And that slowly adds up. It really does. And that puts pressure on James to keep finding these Skyfields. Once again, there will be one more Skyfield in the deck over the stadiums in Lance's deck.
Right, and you just saw Lance attach 2 basic energy, 2 water energy to that Primal Kyogre, and its Ancient Trait allows you to do that.
That's right, but he does have to find a way to keep healing it. Otherwise, it'll still be within that one-hit knockout range of the Emerald Break.
Right, Suicune gets another 70 damage onto the board on James's side with another Aurora Beam.
Now, I wonder if James will be able to draw his way out of this one. His draw for the turn did not help him out. It only gave him a Rayquaza again.
Not really, yeah. He's going to have to put another double colorless energy down, and then, he plays another double colorless. He has to decide if he's going to play the Shaman. Yep. He could have put out that other, couldn't put out that other Rayquaza because, his Skyfield got taken off.
There's the Skyfield that we're just talking about.
Back again.
Yeah, that Skyfield does counter that Rough Seas. That's actually huge. That is enormous. And now a Colress gets him 8 additional cards that draws him out of this awful situation that he had found himself in, assuming his 8 cards are better than his previous one.
Yeah, I don't think that they could be much worse at what he had there previously. But it looks like that might be pretty much the end of the stadium battles. We might be landing on Skyfield unless Lance finds his Shrine of Memories.
Oh, that's right. He does have a Shrine of Memories, but I believe he still has 1 Rough Seas left. If he doesn't, then that's going to be rough for him. No pun intended.
All right, James is looking through his new cards, trying to formulate what his strategy is here. Kind of adjusting his bench. Might be trying to figure out if he wants to do an Aurora Beam, or an Emerald Break. But right now, until he can get around that Suicune, he can't do any damage. And yeah, he just puts out another Mega Rayquaza and without a Spirit Link, ends his turn without attacking because he can't do any damage anyway.
That's right. Now, we mentioned that the Heatran was going to be the key to victory against the Suicune, but he has not been able to power it up at all. And the fact that he's just running out of these options against the Suicune while it's still slowly and steadily dealing 70 damage to him every turn, it's going to start adding up. There's the final Rough Seas. This is it, the final one. If he can lock it, if he can keep it in play, it'll do what it needs to. But unless he can do that, he's going to be in tons of trouble because his opponent will win that war against the Rough Seas.
Right, and you see James having to discard that Shaman EX because when the Skyfield goes away, your bench size shrinks back down to 5.
I believe James just drew a computer search, so if he wants to counter it, he can.
If he has another Skyfield.
That's right. It could be prized. All right. So now James's turn begins, and a Lysander for the Kyogre. It's the final turn before he can avoid getting knocked out here.
Right. Depending on how much damage he can put out with that, since his Emerald Break isn't going to be at the maximum damage here, that 60 damage being on Primal Kyogre already is very important.
That's right. He would still have to find a Skyfield and some additional Pokemon to go with it.
Right, or maybe even a Muscle Band. I don't know if he even runs Muscle Band, though. Doesn't look like it. Since he's going to be running so many Spirit Links, he doesn't get to Muscle Band as primary attacker anyway, so he doesn't play those.
That's right. James is going to be going for an end here, trying to find a perfect hand, because that's basically what he needs here in order to not get this knockout of the Primal Kyogre.
He discarded that end to a computer search, so he is searching for any card left in his deck. And his deck is pretty empty. He's played so many Professors, so many Colresses, so many Shaman at this point. Looks like he's down to under 10 cards left in his deck.
The computer search found him a Bronzong.
Yeah, which he really needed, and finally is able to start pulling those Metal Energy out of his deck. Probably going to be putting it on Heatran is going to be my guess.
That's right. And I would hope that James still has a supporter left in his deck, or in his hand, in order to keep some sort of momentum going.
Right. When he discarded that end to the computer search, it gets down to that, or maybe Versus Seekers to get a few of those. He does have a Versus Seeker in his hand.
That's great for him. He actually decides to pass, though, I believe. Or
No, he
just
does
attack,
his-
I believe. Yeah.
does the Emerald Break, but without the Skyfield. Primal Kyogre has enough HP, that big 240, allowing it to survive that maximum Emerald Break with no Skyfield. And then the Rough Seas just start slowly healing all the damage off. And again, we see that Keldeo dance gets to move in and out and put that Suicune EX wall back up there.
All right, we do see an opening here for James, though. If he can find a way to Lysander up that Kyogre and knock it out before it gets too relevant, then he'll be able to Heatran into the Suicune, and he'll leave his opponent with no energies in play.
Right, and he has that Versus Seeker, so he could do it right now if he wants to. And he has so few cards left in his deck that going for a card draw supporter might not really be what he wants at this point.
That's right. He does have plenty of options already on his field. And that's what I love about this metal deck is that you really don't need too many resources in your hand once you have enough resources on your bench.
Right. That looks to be his only option. He's going to bring up that Primal Kyogre, but now with 180 damage on it already,
that's right.
It won't be able to make it through another Emerald Break.
He's trying to nullify the Rough Seas with just absolute attack. Turn after turn, Lysander after Lysander, finds a way to knock it out.
Right, and he gets another energy onto that Heatran. So as he's slowly chipping away against the Primal Kyogre, Heatran is getting closer and closer to being able to knock out the Suicune.
That's right. And now Lance needs to find another Kyogre, needs to start powering up that Kyogre, and that's not easy to do.
Yeah, it does. Again, that attack takes 4 energy, but if you get to Primal Kyogre, you can play twice as many energies you normally can out of your hand. But yeah, he really, during that, he had so many turns with that Suicune blocking any damage from happening. Him not being able to get another Kyogre out during that turn has got to be a little difficult.
That's right. Lance is just going to be knocking out, or not knocking out this Mega Rayquaza. Obviously, it has more than enough hit points to be able to survive this, and that's Heatran time.
Yeah, Heatran's going to be almost ready here. He's going to be able to use the Metal Link's ability, get another energy on it, and then he can actually start damaging the Suicune.
That's right.
And that also allows him, if he does end up bringing it up, it'll kind of allows him to dodge 2 more prizes being taken from keeping the Mega Rayquaza being knocked out, surviving with a whole 10 HP out of that 220.
If he has an additional energy in his hand, the Suicune will go down.
It doesn't look like he does, and he can't play that Shaman to get around it. He's got a Versus Seeker in his hand.
That's right. All right, so now James, oh man, I wish I could see his hand here. James is deep in thought.
Yeah, James has 2 Spirit Links, a Versus Seeker, and a Shaman in his hand. So given that his bench is full, he doesn't have a Skyfield, the Versus Seeker is the only, and an Aegis Slash. So the Versus Seeker is the only card in his hand that actually can do anything. And then again, he probably doesn't want to do any kind of draw supporter. So at this point, the Lysander is really his only option to do anything.
Yeah, I wish I knew how many cards were left in his deck, because that would tell us how many options he has. It does seem like it's very few, but very few could be, a wide range of numbers here.
Right.
And now he gives us a shot of his hand. His hand does not look very exciting, like you've been mentioning.
Yeah. So Lance might be able to do some kind of alternate switch here of trying to just block everything with the Suicune. And yeah, James just has to pass.
James decides to pass rather than spend his Versus Seeker, and that means Suicune is going to be able to knock out this Pokemon. By the way, we haven't really been talking too much about some of the Pokemon in Lance's deck. He does play Articuno, so if he finds a way to be able to get a knockout with Articuno, he'll be able to take extra prizes without James really expecting it.
Right, and then you see Lance just played his own Lysander there, brought up the Bronzong, and can knock that out, or even just strand it up in the active position and keep his Pokemon okay for a while, because now he can't get the Heatran up.
That does allow James to Metal Links into his Heatran, giving it the 4th energy, but he has to pass the turn.
Right, and
now
you
it's
see that
dead count time.
Right, and you see that Lance didn't even attack on that Bronzong, because if he attacks, that allows James to bring up a new active Pokemon. Right now, that Bronzong is completely stranded. It has a 3 retreat cost, so James would have to put a minimum of 2 energy cards on there if he uses a double colorless, which he might be out of at this point.
Lance just counted both players' decks and then decided to Juniper. That must mean that this deck count must be so close, so absolutely close in order for him to be able to pull this off, and after counting both decks.
Right, but yeah, it looks like Lance may have figured out that he can wall to the end of the game with his Suicune and or stranding that Bronzong.
Yeah, that could be an alternate form of victory. Something we don't see every day in the Pokemon game, but it can happen.
Yeah, but just to be sure, he is powering up that Primal Kyogre, because if Heatran does come up, suddenly that Suicune wall doesn't do anything.
Yeah, so Lance now debating what he wants to do, actually, more than whether or not he wants to do it. Obviously, the Suicune strategy was not going to work out with Heatran waiting in the wings here, which meant that he had to switch up his strategy, and he's done so perfectly in order to be able to just start powering up this Primal Kyogre.
Right, so he used the Keldeo rush-in retreat maneuver, and he puts his other Suicune up front, the one with no energy on it. So if James is able to pull off something to get a Pokemon, to get that Heatran up, his Suicune that has all the energy on it will still be safe. He can knock out with the Kyogre and then retreat back into the Suicune, and he'll have a permanent EX wall for the rest of the game.
This was a series of incredible plays by Lance this turn. Honestly, these are very subtle but great plays. The fact that he's been slowing the game down, Lysander's up the Bronzong, counts both players' decks, starts powering up a Primal Kyogre in case things go awry, and then decides to actually just activate a Suicune without any energy in play. Very little risk, very high reward.
Yeah, really good game awareness of him there. Looks like James is going to be playing an N to try to extend the game. Well, he versus Seekers for N anyway, and he is probably going to be trying to extend the game out a little bit by shuffling more than 4 cards into his deck and then only drawing 4. It makes it so his deck actually grows a little bit there, gives him more time. But if the way that Lance has everything locked down here, the amount of time that James has might not even matter anymore.
Yeah, James has decided that he can wait no longer. He can't keep draw passing. He needs to start finding some cards. He decides to end early, and once again, the deck counts have got to matter here.
Right, but I don't know that James even has anything left that he can do. I guess he's trying to counterpunch the Lance's stalling tactic there to see if maybe he can try to make Lance deck out before he does.
Yeah, he attaches, I believe, a 5th energy to this Heatran. Now, a Versus Seeker for a Lysander. The Heatran might go down this turn. He does Lysander it up.
Right. Brings up the Keldeo,
yeah,
swaps the Keldeo
rushes
for
in.
Primal Kyogre.
And, wow, this Heatran with 5 energies is about to go down.
Right, Primal Kyogre does have enough energy to use its big attack, and does 150 damage there, moves 2 energy to the back.
It's only 1 prize, but man, is it a big one. 5 energies go down.
No, because it also does 30 to every Pokemon on your opponent's bench.
You're right.
So he's able to take out both of those highly damaged Mega Rayquazas on the back there, takes 5 prizes in 1 move.
What a huge turn of events. You're absolutely right. I forgot about the secondary part of that attack. It deals extra damage to all EXs, including the Rayquazas, which, whether it be by strategy or sheer luck alone, had the perfect amount of damage on him.
Right. We saw that one Mega Rayquaza get back to the bench with only 10 HP left, but that was always a threat from Primal Kyogre.
Yeah, it's something you have to be aware of. Obviously, Primal Kyogre is not a deck that you play against very often, but man, do you have to be aware of its attacks, because the subtle small text that you see on that card says deal 30 damage to all benched EXs on your opponent's side of the field.
Right. So you see the Bronzong there without any damage on it, but yeah, that Primal Kyogre just dealt a devastating blow. There's no chance for any Pokemon to do damage to Suicune now either. But yeah, Lance might just be able to go for plain old knockouts instead of waiting for the game to stall at this point.
Wow. Okay, so Lance has been playing this game masterfully, and Lysander up against the Bronzong. 1 prize left on his 1 prize left. Decides to deal 70 to it with Suicune here,
right?
And 20 HP left on it. Any Lysander from this point on will just win the game for Lance. James not giving up acro bikes. Decides to get rid of the Shaman, which,
right.
Not as relevant when you have a couple cards left in your deck.
Yeah, he certainly does not want to draw.
Back absolutely against the wall, and he decides to just scoop him up,
right.
Gives up this game. Game 1 goes to Lance. Masterfully played by Lance.
Yeah, Lance did, like we said, a lot of the little things there, was able to really pay attention to all the game state, setting up things so that Primal Kyogre could have that big, massive 5 prize turn what a great like game sense that he showed there.
Yeah, no doubt that he's played this deck quite a bit. I mean, he said he only built it the day before, but man, he's playing it like he's been playing it for years because he took perfect advantage of his Primal Kyogre's attack like I've never seen before. He set up the bench to the point where he would take 5 prizes with a single attack. That's something you haven't seen in many, many years.
Yeah, that's a big swing. You don't until you saw some of those like spread decks that would move damage counters around that would then simultaneously take all of the prizes. You really don't see stuff like that these days. And it really goes to show that Primal Kyogre is it's so strong in this current format because of being able to, people are constantly retreating out these huge Pokemon with a bunch of damage on them, thinking that they're going to be safe on the bench, and then, maybe they Lysander one up and I lose that one. But yeah, Primal Kyogre taking down 3 at once.
That's right, and with no super scoop ups on James's deck at all, there's just no way for him to really get rid of this damage.
He has 1 AZ, but so a little bit of consistency there. But he has to versus Seeker that out, and also he loses his supporter for the turn if he does it.
That's right. It comes at a hefty cost. We saw the Primal Kyogre deck, a deck that honestly very was very unexpected coming into the national championships. It's one win away from being crowned the national champion in the senior division.
Yeah, it's really great. The other thing that we saw Lance doing there that worked really well for him was he was making sure that at the end of that stadium battle that his stadium was coming out on top. In fact, he probably seems like he even had one more stadium in his pocket just in case he needed to go again there. So yeah, since James's deck is so dependent on that Skyfield of playing out all those extra Pokemon. Once he was able to finally lock James to a normal-sized bench, James really was stuck and couldn't do anything. And he also was able to get that timing perfect of waiting for a Sky Return with a full bench and then knocking it down knocking the Skyfield out. Suddenly he couldn't put that Shaman back out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Stadium War, like we mentioned earlier, it's a beautiful thing to see players have this kind of game of chess between them, one stadium against the other. We saw that Lance came out on top. The Rough Seas did exactly what it needed to do. It forced James into an uncomfortable position where he had to keep Lysandering his opponent in order to actually knock out the first Kyogre. And the second one came out and did work.
Yeah, absolutely. And you saw that we've got the game finally set up here for Game 2. Looks like Lance did have to mulligan once, so James will get an extra card. And these players are ready to start Aegislash versus Suicune for the opening Pokemon. So both decks' walls are showing up for in the
and
initial
there's Skyfield again on turn 1.
Right. Playing that Skyfield right away, he might have a supporter in his hand that is going to get rid of his hand, so he wants to make sure to get his Skyfield out before he plays that. Looks like he does have an N.
Yeah, and he wanted to be able to set up for an additional card as well. The unsung hero of last match was the Suicune, no doubt about it. That Suicune bot lands so many turns, and I mean, it was just by far the MVP in that match.
Yeah, the Suicune did a great job of slowing things down, and then as things were getting Lysandered up, or if something did get hurt, he was able to maneuver with that Keldeo EX using Russian and Floatstone to make sure he always had the active Pokemon of his choice up.
That's right. Now, James does get a new hand of 6 cards because of the end, but so does Lance.
Right. So James gets that Heatran down, knows that he has to have that out to get through that Suicune wall, and is then Ultra Balling for another Shaman EX.
There's that explosive turn again. No wonder James is always almost out of cards in his deck. His first turns are always constantly drawing him several cards. Ultra Ball does get rid of 2 Junipers in order to be able to find it as Shaman, but that also allows him to be able to set up for 4 cards. He has a Skyfield in his hand to counter his opponent's Rough Seas if necessary as well. And he can still play an additional bench if he'd like.
Yeah, and then interestingly enough, getting rid of those Junipers are good and bad. Juniper's drawback of having to discard cards can often help out that Mega Rayquaza deck by sending extra metal energy to the discard pile. But looks like Lance's massive turn, or James's big turn is finally over. We get to move back over to Lance. Lance puts, again, another really minor start for Lance. Puts 1 water energy on his Suicune and then plays a Juniper.
One thing I want to notice is that there is no Mega Rayquaza in play for James. James could have easily just ended his turn with a Mega Rayquaza evolution, but he didn't decide not to. He just didn't have the option to.
Right. And so that is going to be slowing him down slightly. He also has no Spirit Links, it looks like. So unless he gets one of those soon, he's not going to be able to take care of that. Lance, again, fighting that Stadium War, make sure that he puts out Rough Seas, getting rid of one of those Skyfields. James did have to discard one of his Shaman EX. It's better than getting it knocked out, but suddenly his bench is full again.
Yeah, that's right. Now, man, okay, so James and Lance are in the Stadium War. The Stadium War's begun early. Now on Lance's turn, he countered the Skyfield with a Rough Seas, and James does have the counter himself, but once again, you're going to see him slowly start to run out of these Skyfields, and he still has yet to even get a Mega Rayquaza in play to be able to take advantage of the Skyfield to begin with.
Right. Lance gets a Kyogre on the board, gets a Shaman on the board to get some more cards into his hand, passes the turn back. He has that Suicune Wall. Stadium War goes back to Skyfield and gets another Rayquaza on the bench. Looks like he's going to go for a big Colress here.
Yeah, this time around he decided to Skyfield in order to draw an additional card from the Colress. I mean, yeah, sure that he is getting some value from the Skyfields, but it's not giant value like you'd like to see. You'd like to see your Skyfield come down and then all of a sudden you deal 200 plus damage to your opponent.
Right. But by drawing all those extra cards, he's trying to give himself that opportunity. But wow, looks like he didn't get any Pokemon on that. Oh, he did get one Mega Rayquaza, but he has no Spirit Link, is digging with his Acrobike.
He finds a Skyfield, he has to discard a Bronzor to find the Acrobike, but that's not a big discard anyway because of the Bronzong already being in play.
Right. He knows that he has to have every Skyfield in his deck. He can't be giving any of those up because if he does, he's going to lose that Stadium War like he did last game, and suddenly his Emerald Breaks are not going to be doing the damage he needs.
That's right. Now, a Heatran is starting to get powered up slowly but surely, and that's exactly what he needs to counter this Suicune.
Right. Got one double colorless on there, and he does have a Bronzong, so once he gets some Metal Energies into his discard pile, he'll be able to start getting that onto the Heatran as well. Yeah,
James Mega evolves to end his turn, and now it's on Lance to capitalize on James's honestly pretty slow start.
Yeah, Lance has that Suicune EX up front, so James can't damage it even if he wants to. So again, ending his turn with the Mega Rayquaza Mega Evolution doesn't even hurt him that much.
Lance's Versus Seeker finds him an end, and if he does end here, he'll give both players a hand of 6 cards, which he decides to do.
And you see he had some energy in his hand. He didn't play it. He may be trying to get a Primal Kyogre out so he can double attach.
That's absolutely correct. Now, all right, so he doesn't have a Primal Kyogre yet, but obviously he can get one soon. And he does want to start powering one up in order to be able to start dealing this heavy damage to his opponent's field.
Saw he got another N in there. He got his Spirit Link, got his Primal Kyogre, and there we go. There's the double attach. So yeah, he got everything he needed off that N. Only drew 6 cards, and 4 of them were the 4 cards he was hoping to get.
Well, that's what happens when you're vying for the national championships. Or for the national champion trophy, you do have to get a little lucky with your draws in order to actually win these matches. James now gets to go, and he still has to find a way to deal damage to the Suicune.
Right, he does get a Metal Energy into his discard, is able to attach one from his hand. So suddenly Heatran is a real threat to that Suicune.
Yeah, I mean, by threat you mean he'll knock it out. So yeah, it's finally going to be pressure on Lance. I mean, it took a while, but he finally has the ability to start knocking Lance's Pokemon out. And that's exactly what he does. He knocks out the Suicune and the Primal Kyogre. Not a moment too late. He does have to find a couple of energy cards, but if he does, he'll start attacking onto his opponent's Pokemon.
Right. That Heatran was able to hit it with the Steam Blast, knock out that Suicune, and now Lance has the Primal Kyogre up, but the Primal Kyogre doesn't have enough energy to attack yet. Plays an N. He's really got to be looking for 2 more Water Energy at this point. The Tidal Storm will be enough to knock out that Heatran, but that's going to bring up a Mega Rayquaza probably on James' side if he goes with that play.
I don't believe he's found the Water Energies at all. He didn't even find a single one.
Wow.
But keep in mind, if he does find a way to knock out this Heatran, he'll be in a great position because his opponent only plays 1, I believe. And if he only plays 1, then he'll have to start attacking with Bronzong if Lance starts spamming Suicunes.
Right. That Suicune Wall will be very good for him. He has 1 more in his deck somewhere. Could possibly be prized as well. Gets the Floatstone on the Keldeo, and maybe wanting to do that Keldeo maneuver here at some point.
And he can Ultra Ball and find something like a Shaman or something to be able to draw himself additional cards.
Right. He might go for the Suicune. Actually, he gets the Kyurem from Plasma.
I'm not sure what that means beyond the fact that he's just using it to kind of take a hit, which is, it's great. It's definitely a nice wall. It's no Suicune, but it'll have to do.
Right. Since it's a non-EX Pokemon, James only gets to take one prize from that. That might be his thinking right now. And by giving Heatran more work to do, might slow down it eventually being able to not get through that Suicune if he gets out.
Yeah, he just wants to give himself an additional turn to play another supporter and give himself another shot at drawing these 2 water energies that he needs in order to start attacking.
Although he may have possibly Ultra Balled and found out that his Suicune was prized and decided that the Kyurem was his only option there.
Yeah, there's several things that could have happened, but at the same time, Lance's strategy is the same. Find a way to stay alive. Once he does, find a way to find a couple of water energies and then start attacking.
Right. James has got a pretty solid board at this point. None of his Mega Rayquaza are fully powered up yet, but he's close enough that at any time he's ready to go live with those Pokemon, he can do that.
A computer search from James is going to allow him to find any card he'd like in his deck, but in reality, that's the beauty of this deck, is he now has pretty much whatever he needs. I'm sure he could use a couple additional cards, but he doesn't necessarily need them.
Right, and if you see there, he discarded 2 Junipers to his computer search, which means all 4 of his Junipers have been discarded to pay the cost of other cards.
Fair enough. I believe did he find a Floatstone or something like that?
I did not see what he drew there.
Well, we'll have to wait and find out. There's a Bronzor that gets played.
Right, getting that bench up to now the not quite the new maximum size. He still has 1 more slot if he wants to get something else out there. Puts another double colorless on a non-Mega Rayquaza. And then hits the Shaman.
Shaman sets up for 5 additional cards. Does find him a Floatstone.
Also, there's a Lysander and a couple Versus Seekers there. So all of a sudden, he's back in the driver's seat for what Pokemon he wants to be active on Lance's side.
Yeah, that Floatstone was huge, and he also found a way to be able to bring that Kyogre to the active position here.
Right, because he was able to. Now he can retreat the Heatran for free, bring the Primal Kyogre up front, and he's got the big Emerald Break.
Is that 240 damage?
Yep, 8 times 3.
Yeah, wow, go figure. That 240 damage Emerald Break knocks out that Kyogre before it even gets to attack. That's 2 energies gone. That's 2 prizes for James. That's huge.
Yeah, Lance suddenly has a board without much of anything on it. He can still maneuver whoever he wants active with his Keldeo and that Floatstone, but he's got a long way to go all of a sudden.
That's how you take advantage of Skyfield. That's exactly what he needed to get, the kind of mileage he needed to get out of the Skyfield here. And now, with only 3 prize cards remaining and his opponent having no energy in play, you have to believe that James is now in a prime position to win this game.
Right, Lance was not able to force the Stadium War early like he was in the last game, although he gets a Rough Seas here, does make James discard a bunch of Pokemon. He's working on which ones he wants to keep right now. Yeah, so he discards down to those Pokemon. Lance does get another Kyogre out, puts 1 water on it. Looks like he's got a Spirit Link for it, but probably does not have a Primal Kyogre in his hand at this point because he has another water energy and couldn't use the Ancient Trait.
Yeah, Lance is back to the rebuilding phase. He has to start from scratch all over again. He keeps the Keldeo up and passes. It's rough, but his opponent does need to find another Skyfield in order to really be able to start bouncing back and dealing this heavy damage again.
Yeah, I wonder if sending up the Kyurem would have been a better play there to
force well, I like this
James.
one. He Versus Seekers for a Lysander to activate the Shaman, which he will be able to knock out with the Emerald Break.
Right, Shaman doesn't have enough HP to survive a normal sized bench Emerald Break like Primal Kyogre does. You have to have Skyfield out, and that's also another 2 prizes.
James takes 2 additional prizes. He is down to a single prize this game. His opponent needs to end him in order to be able to stay in this game, but also needs to find a way to just avoid dying to these 150 damage attacks.
Right. So he plays a Dive Ball and does get a Primal Kyogre, but he isn't going to have enough energy to attack quite yet. Even with the Professor's Letter, he's going to be 1 short because he's only got 2 on there.
That's right. So that Professor's Letter does find him a couple of energies, but it's just not what he needs right now. He needs to find a way to stay in this game. Otherwise, his opponent's going to tie it up, and they're going to go to a deciding Game 3.
Right, but he's got a Versus Seeker here. Also, it looks like he's playing the League version of Professor's Letter. Play in Pokemon League today and get great promo cards, everybody.
as the final turns unfold in this game 2 of the National Championship Finals. So now at this point, Lance does find the end. He ends his opponent down to a single card, something he needed to do, but still, will it be enough to keep himself in this game and win this game for him?
Right. Since he does have Primal Kyogre up front, Primal Kyogre is now able to take Emerald Break of the size that James can currently output. He's only got one prize in his hand. So Lance did everything he possibly could to try to get things up here, but he's going to put the non-Primal Kyogre up.
Yeah, that's not winning. That's just staying alive. There it
It's
is. The
the
Lysander
versus
finds him the final prize. He ties it up, goes down to a 1-1 final game 3 incoming.
Yeah, so Lance had a pretty slow start in both of those games, although in the first game he was able to have a Suicune up front and really wall off any kind of damage for long enough for him to get his board reset up. But here, James was able to get Heatran loaded up with energy fast enough to knock out that Suicune that then he was able to mow through the rest of things with Emerald Breaks.
Exactly. That's the game plan that James had all along. He needed to find a way to just mitigate that Suicune's effectiveness, and he found it with the Heatran. He was able to actually start attacking it early, put too much pressure on it. The Suicune strategy was out the window, and without enough energy in play, he just couldn't do anything. He really didn't get any type of offense going whatsoever. The end to try to stall the game out backfired, and his opponent found the Lysander right away to even the game, even the series up.
Yeah, it was his best. It was his best shot there, and if he doesn't draw that versus Seeker, it works out just fine for him. But yeah, Lance is going to have to. He's really just had rough starts both of these games, so maybe he gets a little better start here. But that's just the problem with Mega Rayquaza, with so many Shaman EX and the draw supporters and everything it can do there with Skyfield. It has these such explosive first turns. I don't think he's seen less than 30 cards on either of his first turns yet.
Yeah, going first was huge for James in order to be able to really start putting the pressure on. He didn't get to take advantage of it like he would have liked, but still, the fact that he got to go first just let him get set up just a little bit quicker, and that allowed him to once again get past the Suicune wall.
Right. Lance is going to be going first this game. Looks like that both players have everything set up, so this should be started right away. They're getting their prizes set up, and this game will be underway very shortly.
The deciding game 3, the winner of this game is the national champion. We see the handshake, and we see Lance start this game in what no doubt is a very high-pressure situation.
Yeah, so a little better start for Lance here, although that's not specifically who he would like to have up front at the very beginning with the Kyogre EX. Certainly a decent start, but James, with only that Bronzor, could be in a little bit of trouble if he doesn't have a supporter in his hand.
That's right. The Ultra Ball can find Lance a variety of options. It can find him another Kyogre, it can find him a Suicune, which he decided to get, or he could have found him a Shaman if he felt like he needed additional cards. But instead, he just attaches an energy to the Suicune and ends his opponent and himself to a brand new hand of 6 cards.
Yeah, he might not have had any other supporter besides that end, so an interesting play. Hopefully, he's probably hoping that his opponent ends into a hand that does not much at all, although given that he didn't do anything initially, it might have been better to try to hold him on that end and just have the Bronzor out there.
Yeah, potentially. However, 6 new cards for Lance. Once again, got to go first. He draws a couple of Spirit Links, which are pretty nice to have, but he needs to find a way to also get the Kyogre into the bench position because it's not doing him any good in the item spot right now.
Yeah, and on that draw, James gets a Spirit Link, Ultra Ball, and Shaman, so he's going to have a huge explosive turn now all of a sudden based on his opponent's end.
Yeah, I mean, that is what happens. That's a risk you take. And he does decide to Float Stone instead of attaching the Spirit Link, which means that Suicune is now the active Pokemon.
Right. He will find a turn where he doesn't really need to attack when he needs to Mega Evolve there. But yeah, like we said, here's the Ultra Ball. Probably going to be finding a Rayquaza. I think he's got a Spirit Link and a double colorless, so he can put out the Rayquaza, put on the Spirit Link, put out the double colorless, and then play the Shaman for kind of maximum value of every card in his hand at that point. He did have to give up a Bronzong, though, which is something he isn't really happy about.
No, you definitely don't want to give up a Bronzong here. The Juniper, not such a painful thing. He will probably attach a double colorless energy in the Spirit Link and then set up for 6 cards, which he does. A brand new hand of 6 cards. That's like a Juniper without a downside.
And he draws one of his other Bronzongs there, so working out really great for him in these early draws.
Yeah, and having the Float Stone on the Bronzor is really nice because it allowed him to attach the double colorless onto the Rayquaza without having fear of getting it stuck in the active position. Now, an N from James, he as nice as getting 6 new cards was, it just didn't find him what he needed. And he finds an additional hand of 6 cards, and once again, Lance gets a 2.
Yep, so maybe this will work out for Lance as well as his worked out for James. But yeah, Lance is going to be able to get his 6 new cards, but James is going to probably have some more big draws here if he's got anything like another Shaman in there.
Yeah, the thing is, the Suicune being active is exactly what Lance wants to have. James needs to like Lysander the Suicune away, which he did draw. But in order to be able to really take advantage of the explosive Rayquaza start, he needs to find a way to get the Suicune out of the active position.
Yeah, he does have a Skyfield in his hand, but playing it now doesn't do much for him and might put him on the wrong foot in these Stadium Wars. But he might want to get it out of his hand in case his hand gets shuffled away with N. But yeah, he's going to wait on that right now to try to make sure that he's got the momentum with the Stadium cards.
Yeah, he left the Bronzor in the active position because he knows his opponent can't really take advantage of this situation. A single energy attachment and an additional N from Lance.
Yeah.
We've seen this before.
Yeah, Lance just having to, all 3 games, really just having to try to fish and fish and fish for answers. And an all-water deck, usually do it that much fishing isn't a bad idea.
Yeah, no kidding. So at this point, Lance needed to get an additional hand of 6 as his hand just was not cooperating with him. And he hopes to have that change here.
Looks like he did get a Spirit Link, but with the Float Stone on Kyogre, he isn't going to be able to play it on this one anyway.
Yeah, that's not exactly.
But he gets the Keldeo, and he's put a Float Stone on there, of course, and now he can do that Keldeo rush-in maneuver to always have his active Pokemon, whoever he wants it to be. Has the other Suicune, so he's in great shape right now.
Yeah, that other Suicune was nice to have because in case his opponent somehow finds a way to start attacking his Suicune, he won't risk the 2 energy attachments that he's already displayed here.
James gets a Keldeo of his own and then plays an Acrobike, again, sending more of those Junipers to the discard pile. After that first game, he's probably realizing that he draws so many cards that playing every Juniper in his deck is probably not the best idea.
Yeah, and it took a while, but we finally see the first Stadium in this 3rd game, and that is a Skyfield. Once again, 3 for 3, the first Stadium has gone to James.
Right. James plays a computer search. We saw him get a Shaman out of that, so he'll be playing that again to make sure that he's able to get more cards out. And again, discarding another Juniper, realizing that he's drawing so much already that he doesn't need the additional power from every single Juniper in his deck.
Yeah, James' strategy is clear here. He just wants to draw as many cards as he can every turn in order to just find the proper resources in order to keep himself in this advantageous position in the game.
He still hasn't found a Bronzong, so he's not able to get his acceleration going. He doesn't look like he's got the Heatran either, so that Suicune has still got him completely locked down. Another Versus Seeker.
Yeah, Versus Seeker from James here is going to find him another N. And once again, we've seen this story before.
Yeah, both players just ending constantly because they're not wanting to discard much of their cards, and because they really need them to, all the cards they have are cards that they want to keep, and so they're still running N for 6 cards at this point, hoping to get those cards in their hand later in the game.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, these players have both had pretty anemic starts. They're just not, they're not, they're pulling their punches. They're not dealing damage. They're not doing anything really in order to cement any type of board position here. And James is hoping to change that with his N, but I mean, he needs so many things.
Right. Lance really has kind of the best super long run position right now with the double Suicune and no Heatran on James's side.
Exactly. So now James Mega evolves to the Rayquaza, and that's it. That's the end of his turn. Bronzor stays active.
Right. He had the Spirit Link on there, but it didn't even matter because he did nothing with it. Lance counterpunches with the Rough Seas, trying to get a leg up in the Stadium Wars, but James does have another Skyfield in his hand.
All right, so one thing that I do want to note is that the Bronzor has been left in the active position in order to get knocked out by the Suicune. That's actually huge because there's no additional Bronzors in play for James. So James, by allowing that Bronzor to get knocked out, is really just saying, I'm okay with having this really awkward, bad start, and I'm okay. I feel like I'm going to be playing for the late game here.
Right, and then what's also interesting there is normally with most decks bringing up something to knock out that Bronzor to allow James to bring up the Mega Rayquaza for quote-unquote free wouldn't be something that you wanted to do. But he's got that Suicune that's the one that's knocking out the Bronzor. So now it's got the safeguard, and it's going to be completely immune to that Mega Rayquaza's attacks.
Yeah, that's exactly why I wasn't very excited to see the Bronzor go down here, because he needs a Bronzong in play in order to really power up that Heatran, which pressures the Suicune. He can't manually power up a Heatran. It just takes too long.
Right. It's going to be so many turns that Lance is going to be able to find a counterplay for that, move up a Primal Kyogre at some point, although he still hasn't found a Primal Kyogre yet.
And James, once again, has to play a Skyfield to very little advantage because he has the Juniper from a Versus Seeker in order to find additional resources. He's not in a good spot, but he does find another Bronzor, which he absolutely desperately needed here.
And then he played an Acrobike there, took the chorus, and felt like he had to discard the Skyfield. So that is suddenly he's played all 3 of his Skyfields, or does he run? He does have 4 Skyfields. So that's 3 of his 4 Skyfields out of the picture now. So Lance suddenly has a big advantage in the stadium battle.
Yes, he does. With 3 Skyfields gone, you have to believe that Mega Rayquaza is just not going to be threatening the Primal Kyogre like it did last game. And that was his key to victory that game. He dealt enough damage to this Primal Kyogre to just knock it out right away, right? He does not, he just won't have that kind of option right now. And he still has to get past the Suicune to begin with.
So using my psychic abilities, I was able to tell that he had just drawn Shrine of Memories because he wanted to see what regular Rayquaza EX does, because he suddenly opened up all Pokemon to be able to use attacks from their lower evolutions. So you see him suddenly fishing out the regular Rayquaza to see if that's going to be doing anything special for James.
That's right. Now, Lance does Versus Seeker here for Colress. Colress is going to find him 7 additional cards without having to get rid of the other cards. Obviously much better than Juniper here.
Right, and that may be about as big as Colress's as we see. There might be 1 more Skyfield left total to see play this game.
Man, James is just not in a good spot here. His Keldeo doesn't even have a Floatstone on it. It's just going to be taking some hits. 70 damage is not very much, but it does add up.
Yeah,
it's better than 0.
Yeah, Keldeo can take 2 of those without being knocked out, but that's it.
That's correct. Now, a Spirit Link does go down onto the Rayquaza EX. James trying to find some sort of an offense, but he does not have a way to get past this wall without a Lysander.
Right, he does play a Bronzong, and he had a Lysander in his hand, but without knowing that it would only be a temporary boost for him. Did not Lysander and instead Colress for the longer play there. But he does finally have a Bronzong in play.
Yeah, not to mention that the Keldeo does have a 2 retreat, which is relevant when you don't have a Floatstone.
Right.
We're so used to seeing Keldeo just rush in and then rush out with a Floatstone that you kind of take it for granted that you actually need additional cards in order to be able to pull that off, and Keldeo alone just won't do it.
Right. Even with Lysander finally getting him around that Suicune wall, he wouldn't be able to attack anything anyway. And given that Lance has his Keldeo that does have a Floatstone, he gets to adjust his board at will. So yeah, that Lysander doesn't do anything, so he Colresses it back into the deck, and then finally does get his Heatran, but this may be too little too late.
And one thing I want to notice is that James is finally starting to feel the after effects of losing the Stadium War once again. He was trying to just Ultra Ball for a Heatran and automatically put it into the bench, realized he didn't have enough bench spots, and had to put it in his hand. Now the Heatran that he Ultra Balled for can't even get played. James is feeling the pressure here.
Right, James is either going to have to wait for that Keldeo to get knocked out, which isn't great, or he's going to have to try to somehow get a Shaman in the active position and do a Sky Return. But he doesn't. That would be so much energy there as well. It's really neither of those are great situations. That Heatran is going to be stranded in his hand for a long time at this point.
A Versus Seeker from Lance once again finds him a Colress. Colress finds him 8 additional cards here. And Lance is just in the driver's seat. He just wants energies. That's really what he wants. Energies and Kyogres.
Yeah, he still hasn't found a Primal Kyogre to get going there. He really wants to start powering that up so, again, he can have those the really big damage coming out of his side.
That's right. Now, because there's a Floatstone, I believe, on that Kyogre, he will have to spend an entire turn just Primal Evolving it.
Right, he'll have to find a turn where he doesn't really need to drop anything. But even right now, that would be perfectly fine because he doesn't really care about knocking out that Keldeo. In fact, he would like to leave it up where it is right now. It's really slowing down James's ability to get the Heatran out.
That's right. He might have heard you because he just Ultra Balled for the Kyogre. And I'm not sure if he's going to Primal Evolve or not. But if he did, it wouldn't be a bad play by any means.
Yeah,
and it looks like he's going to.
Exactly. Not knocking out Keldeo is his best play right now. So attacking it isn't even the option he wants to take.
Yeah, he wasn't sure if he wanted to or not. He was a little hesitant, but he eventually decided on doing so. And he spends his entire turn Mega Evolving. But now we have a huge Kyogre in play with a couple of energy on it.
Right. So we're going back over to James's side, but his bench is completely locked up. He does have an AZ in his hand, so that would allow him to maneuver things around a little bit.
Yeah, James would have preferred that Lance spend his entire turn attacking and rather than Mega Evolving because the AZ would have mitigated that damage, but instead it feels like Lance just countered it perfectly.
Right, although since he played an AZ, he can't Lysander this turn, so that means that the Mega Rayquaza can't attack through that. And then he does get the Heatran on the bench, puts Double Colorless out of his hand, uses the Bronzong to get another metal on it. So suddenly Heatran is a real thing to deal with.
That's right. Now the Suicune once again paying dividends. I'm telling you, it's been the MVP of this match. Lance has just been able to control the pace here, and with the Suicune not taking any damage from the Mega Rayquaza, now having enough energy on the field in order to be able to start attacking with the Primal Kyogre. A Versus Seeker by Lance finds him another Colress. It feels like we've done this 3 turns in a row. 8 more cards for Lance.
Right, and he also played that Professor's Letter to get 2 more water energy. So his Primal Kyogre is at full power right now.
And he does have a Keldeo with the Float Stone in order to rush in whenever he'd like, so that he doesn't even have to spend the 2 water energies retreating Suicune.
Right, so it might be in his best interest to do that now. It's interesting because the Heatran is suddenly almost to where it needs to be, but James would still have to retreat that Mega Rayquaza at this point.
Yeah, it feels like it's absolutely in his best interest. If Lance had a way to Lysander up the Heatran and then knock it out with the Primal Kyogre, that would have been the best thing for him. But since he spent his turn Colressing, he doesn't have a way to do that. So instead, he might have to just retreat and activate a Suicune here in order to force his opponent.
Right, he doesn't want to risk James having his last Skyfield and being able to surprise knockout Primal Kyogre.
That's right. Lance is playing this once again. He's playing this perfectly. He decides that he doesn't want to just deal damage to the Mega Rayquaza. He doesn't think that that's going to be enough. He actually just wants to find a way to knock out that Heatran without it knocking out a Suicune with 3 energy on it.
Right, and he goes for the super safe play there, switching which of his Suicunes were active. So even if James does pull a maneuver to get Heatran up and knock out a Suicune, it's not going to be the one with energy on it, so his Aurora Beaming ability will still be okay there.
That was huge.
Yeah, but James is able to get everything he needs. He is able to retreat the Mega Rayquaza, bring up the Heatran, Lysander out the Suicune that had energy on it. So yeah, he does make a big wave there.
Okay, so this was a really important play by James here. James had the Lysander knock out the Suicune with 3 energy on it, which now forces Lance to once again slowly start powering up his Suicune. He now spent his energy drop for the turn, attaching the energy to the Suicune manually.
Right. But Primal Kyogre gets to Tidal Storm here. That sends a couple energy back to the Keldeo, knocks out the Heatran, and that is the only Heatran in James's deck, which means now suddenly his Suicune is basically completely invincible unless he has to start facing Bronzong attacks, which isn't that scary.
Yeah, and if you see, James's field has 30 damage pretty much across the board with the exception of Bronzong because, once again, Tidal Storm is just, it's strong, man. He deals so much damage to these EX decks.
Right. We see James play Aegislash, which at this point he has to know that the Aegislash ability doesn't do anything versus Lance's deck, but he needs another Pokemon on his bench to make sure his Emerald Breaks are doing as much as possible.
That's correct. Now, James does have to find a way to knock out this Primal Kyogre, but he also has to find a way to get past the additional Suicune. Without a Heatran in play, it's not going to be easy.
Right. He's plays another big Colress there. He might be looking for the final Skyfield. But
yeah.
We haven't seen one in any of his draws previously, it could be prized.
I mean, we saw James's deck size. James's deck is not very big at all, and drawing 7 cards here it comes at a cost.
Right. He's also accelerating himself towards decking himself out. He's kind of hovering on that acrobike there, which again is a little dangerous. Takes 2 more cards off the top of his deck. Looks like he's considering not playing it. He's looking through his discard pile. I'm pretty sure he's got to be counting Skyfields at this point, and I think he's realized that it's more than likely prized.
James knew that this board state was probably inevitable, where he'd have to fight through Suicunes. However, he would have liked to be in this board state with maybe 3 prize cards left or 2 prize cards left. That's doable. You can win those games. You have a much, much harder time winning games where you have to get past the Suicune, and you still have 5 prize cards remaining.
Right. And then we see James run an acrobike, is forced to discard his Versus Seeker because he needs to have double colorless energy.
Yeah, that's exactly true. That acrobike always has a cost attached to it. Sometimes it's relevant, sometimes it's not so much. This time, it definitely is.
Right, puts a double colorless on his other Mega Rayquaza that he's got on the bench, uses the Metal Link's ability to put another Metal Energy on it, so now it can Emerald Break when it needs to.
Exactly. Now, James powering up the bench Rayquaza and just deals, that's it, just deals 150 damage to his opponent's Kyogre.
Right, and now Lance was really in the driver's seat. He might find it, if he finds a rough seas, that might as well be game over at this point, it looks like, because it seems that there's no more Skyfields accessed for James, and he can just put that Suicune up and take his time to get everything set up to do the perfect play.
That's correct. Without having his Suicune be punished here, I would like to see him build it up rather than build up any other Pokemon. But then again, I guess that's easier said than done. Energy Retrieval, a card that you don't normally see here.
Right, but given that he runs so many basic energy and his deck is so basic energy dependent, actually a pretty strong play in here. Looks like he plays only one of those for just such an occasion. And yeah, he gets it on puts it on the Primal Kyogre, but I don't know if he's going to leave that active or not. Lysander's up a Shaman.
That's right. Having access to multiple energy drops in a turn on the Primal Kyogre actually made it an excellent choice here, and he decided to attach both energies to the Primal Kyogre, powering up a Keldeo on Kyogre's way out here, and taking 2 prizes, leaving himself with only 2 prize cards remaining.
Right. Primal Kyogre now has enough damage on it that any Emerald Break that James can pull off will be able to knock it out, because it only has, with 150 damage on it, only has 90 HP left. So that's a pretty simple Emerald Break. But now Keldeo has so much damage on it that he only needs to Lysander up like a Shaman or pretty much anything, and he can knock it out with Keldeo EX at this point.
Yeah, James knows he's in a bad spot. He takes 2 prizes here, gets himself down to 3, but all we need is a Lysander here.
Yeah, or a Versus Seeker, either one of those.
The Versus Seeker finds the Lysander. No doubt the Lysander is going to knock out that Shaman EX and is going to win Lance Bradshaw the national championships.
Yep, Lance Bradshaw takes it. Again, incredible that all 3 of those games he had such a slow start, but was able to have, with that Suicune in the Game 1 and Game 2, wall off enough of James's attacks that he could take his time to set up his board to be exactly how he wanted it.
Yeah, man, it was exactly what he needed. He knew that the game was right in hand towards the end of the game, and no doubt the last couple of turns were just perfect for Lance. He had everything he needed. The energy retrieval gave him enough energies to be able to knock out a Pokemon, followed by a Lysander on the final turn of the game in order to get his last few prizes on that poor Shaman EX.
Yeah, it's really great seeing the deck that Lance had set up there, with knowing that almost all the attackers in the environment right now are EX, that knowing that Suicune is going to do just so much there. But yeah, Lance is definitely our champion now, and I think we just received word about one of the matches on Master side.
Yeah, that's right. A fan favorite, Jason Klaczynski, has won his match against Dylan Bryan, a match that we wanted to actually feature for you guys after this finals was over. But unfortunately, both matches took pretty much the maximum allotted time, and we now have two national champions crowned.